District. Mark, what are you doing this week to save America?
Everything I can, everything I can. It's not till November that we can take this thing back, and it's terribly disconcerting that we have still almost 100 days until the election. But we've got to do everything that we can, all of us, because things are going so far, so far off the track, so far into the ditch,
Yeah.
and we've got to do what we can, all of us, to get good people elected from Donald Trump down to people like me, down to people like school board members and county board members and state reps and so forth. And so I'm working with everybody to get this message out and to do exactly what we need to do using intelligence
Yeah.
to make that happen.
You would think with all the crazy, because it's like they're showing their hands, they're putting their cards on the table. It's becoming more and more obvious how crazy they are, how leftist they are, commie, if you will.
Yep.
Isn't it easier when you have conversations with people to have these common sense approaches to things and the contrast is so far left? Is it easier when you're talking to people?
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. You know, the silver lining to all of this gaslighting, all of this terrible leftist policies that are literally killing people at worst, and at best just destroying everything we hold dear. You
Yeah.
know, the silver lining to all that, and it is just bad, so I hate even talking about it in a positive light, but it is that fact that it is waking some people up. The people
Mhm.
on the right don't need to be woken up, and the people on the left, far on the left anyway, I call them the Kool-Aid drinkers and
Right.
so forth. They're almost, beyond approach, but there's a lot of folks in the middle, and those people in the middle, they see with their own eyes what's going on in front of them, and that is very helpful with regards to getting people to activate themselves and to actually do something to try to make a difference to take this thing back.
Yeah, in a similar light, I've noticed a lot of or a number of influencers over the last 6 to 8 months have found faith, and they're really like Russell Brand and some of these others, they're, like, now talking about their faith, and
How about
it's
Donald Trump, in fact?
yeah, yeah, but I think with some of these influencers, the conversations they're having now is like, what led you to faith, to believe in God, to believe in Christ? And it's because evil is so prevalent, because before
Right.
right and wrong is kind of a discussion, good versus evil is kind of this thing over here. But now it's like, wow, that evil is so prevalent. Now more people are coming to faith. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually had a conversation today. Just so you know, I'm Jewish and I study the Bible, or what you call the Old Testament,
Mhm,
like 6 days out of 7. So I am a person of faith.
mhm.
And I do believe that God's involved in so much of all of this. And it's actually, I believe it's a nice thing. I suppose that's a second silver lining, that when things get so terrible and so
Mhm.
awful,
Right.
often, people see God or they come back to their faith. And I'm seeing that all the time. And that's a good thing. But once you get past the fact that there are people who don't believe, that now all of a sudden are coming to see God and to believe that there is divine, divinity in
Yeah.
our lives. What's more interesting is to then discuss it at length about how that is involved and what's playing out, and to realize that I tell a story about how God is in charge. People of faith believe that, and so there's a lot of folks, especially when things are going great, they leave God and they believe that we're in charge. That
Mhm.
people are in charge, and there's a lot of jokes and stories about that. But at the end of the day, God is in our lives, and I do believe that God's in charge. But at least the way I believe is that we have to take action.
Yes.
God, there is such a thing as we make our own choices. God is not in charge of every little thing that we do. It's up to us to activate and to make choices on our own. And so I believe that's helping people come to that realization. And I see that every day. And I see God every day. I see God when I wake up. I see God in every moment of every day. But on the other hand, uh, and if you have time, maybe later I'll tell you the joke. It's about how you still have to do something. You still have to help God to realize things, and God's plan is maybe there and it's grand and all that, but we still
Mhm.
have to do the work. So I'm one that is saying to myself, I'm willing to sacrifice to whatever I have to do the work, to make sure that we can make things a lot better for everyone.
Yeah.
which really I believe is inspired by God.
Let's dive into it a little bit. I'd love to hear that story of that joke, that you
Okay,
referred to, but
it's a common thing. You might have heard it
yeah.
before. If
Mhm.
you're Jewish, you had heard it before because it's a Jewish take on it. But basically, a guy, Yankel is his name, and Yankel unfortunately has a wife who's dying, and she has such a bad disease that without a very expensive operation, she'll die. And so he doesn't have the money for it and doesn't have insurance and whatnot. So he goes to his rabbi, and his rabbi says, "Okay, here's what you do. If you pray, if you be a good, you do all these good deeds. We call them mitzvot. You do all these good things, and you also pray, and then you're going to win the lottery, and the lottery will be more than enough money to pay for her operation, and the lottery winnings will carry you through for the rest of your lives." And it's like, oh, great. So he does everything, and anyway, but nothing happens. And he goes and he prays. And it's like, God, what's going on? I was told to do this. I'm being a good boy. I'm doing all these good deeds. I'm, some of the sins I was doing before, I'm not doing anymore. Anyway, and so this goes on and on over and over. 1 week, the next week, the next week. And then finally, after 3 weeks, he's like, his wife is getting worse. And he goes to his synagogue and he's like praying out loud, God, why have you forsaken me? I can't believe my wife's going to die now, and I've done everything you've asked. And then he hears this voice from above, and it's God himself. We call him Hashem. God says, Yankel, you got to help me out. You got to at least buy the ticket. You see, we have to do things, and
Right.
God, if we believe God created the world and all that, part of what He created was
Yeah.
that we do make choices, good and bad, and we have to do certain things on earth to bring His will,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
anyway, I actually see in my life's calling up to now, I've done a lot of things in my life, most very successful. It's all been wonderful, actually, family and business and all that, nonprofit helping people. I'm very involved with Israel, all these things. But I actually think that, I'm inspired by the idea of, are you living your life? Is your life's do you what is your purpose in life? Are you living
Right.
life with a purpose, or is your purpose in life just to live? And it's
Mhm.
very hard to find your purpose. And I think that almost everything I've done in my life up to now leads me to this place where I am right now, where
Yeah.
this is my purpose. And this is perhaps what everything before now has led up to, so that I can be in this place right now today, sitting here with you. In fact, maybe part of your purpose is also
Mhm.
to get this information, to shine a light into the darkness. My Hebrew name is actually Meir. Meir is my first name, which
Mm.
means to shine light. And I see as my purpose, maybe that's not a coincidence, right? Maybe there's no such thing as coincidences. It's
Your Hebrew
to
name is
shine
Mayor.
light.
It's
Meir, yeah.
it's Mayor, it's not Congressman, it's Mayor? Are you
No,
kind of no. Can you imagine what would happen if Moses didn't raise his staff when he was told? Along that
I
same lines?
I didn't tell you my name is actually Meir Adam ben Moshe. Well, that
Hmm.
means Mark Adam, son of Moses. My
Mm,
father's name
yeah.
was Moshe. So
But I
no, I
but I
can't
but
imagine.
but you're absolutely I love that, God works through human agency. It's like your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Your will be
Right.
done, but we've got a role to play. How do you determine how do you listen for that still small voice? How do you hear God and discern? Because there's a lot of noise out there
There certainly is.
and
We
there's a lot of
in
distractions
Judaism we
and
have a neat trick. It's
mm,
almost like a hack, and I would encourage everybody. What doesn't matter what
yeah,
religion you are, is we take a day off. We call it Shabbat. It
yeah.
actually starts tonight, so I can say good Shabbos to you. It
Mhm,
starts at sundown and it ends the next day on Saturday at
mhm,
sundown, and we completely disengage. We turn off our cell phones. We don't watch
mm.
TV. We don't do business, and that is a divine. It's actually in the
Oh,
Bible,
yeah.
to do that.
Mhm,
But the my point is I think it's sort of in our today, with all of our technology and all that, we realize that being completely glued to that cell phone and the laptop and so forth and the telephone,
yep,
and you don't have time to really step back and sort of be introspective and think about what's going on in your life and what's important. which frankly is family, typically. But what's really important and what you can do, and then plan that out and then execute that plan for the week. Very few people, I think, are capable of sort of stepping back and taking a deep breath and
Right.
calming their mind and being grateful for things,
Oh
and
yeah.
that helps a lot too. But anyway, that's very beneficial to me. So I do that once a week. I take some time off and try to think about things and try to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah. So as an outsider, not a career politician, what got you to
That's
say,
my that's me. No
yeah,
career, no more career politicians.
what was it? You're in Illinois, and actually tell me the 8th congressional district. What are some of the cities in that area?
So it goes from O'Hare Airport, which is just west of Chicago, of the city limits, and it
Mhm.
goes way out west. So it's Cook County, DuPage County, and Kane County. And the cities that you might have heard of are like Elgin and St. Charles and
Mhm.
Dundee, and then going back east to like Schaumburg, Roselle,
Wow.
Itasca. And then around the airport, there's a little area, Elk Grove Village, Addison, Rosemont, almost all of
Okay.
Rosemont. But by the way, there's three precincts. I have 507 precincts in my district, and only three of them are in the city of Chicago.
Mm.
And two of those three precincts last election, actually now almost 4 years ago, went for Trump. So
Wow.
Chicago's like 80% Democrat, and yet the little piece of Chicago I have, which is less than 1%, it's a tiny percent,
Right.
but still they went Republican. So it
Mm.
happens to be that the firefighters and the police officers, they don't want to live so close to the city. They know better because it's such a mess. So
Yeah.
they tend to live as far out of the city as they can, but they're required to live within city limits. So they tend to live on the outskirts, and that's just the 1% or less of Chicago that I have. So
Yeah.
I chose this district on purpose. It's all strategic. Illinois has three out of 17. There's 17 congressional districts, only three are Republican. And if
Wow.
you work out that percentage, that's about 18%. Well, the state votes 40 to 50% Republican. So we are batting way below our weight in
Yeah.
terms of that. And so there's a lot of, not a lot, but there are several districts which are strategically should be Republican. And
Yeah.
I'm working with a few others, not all of them. We're all working together, but I'm working specifically with two or three other congressional candidates to flip districts. And I'm one of those. And we're hoping, of course, to get federal help and local help, because rather than put resources into districts which are, say, like D plus 30, actually, you're in one of them. You're in Joe
Yeah.
McGraw's district, right? Joe's one of them. In the
Yeah.
17th, I'm the 8th, and there's a couple
Right.
of others. And we should be putting all of our resources in those places where we can win.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's what I can only do one. I'm only one guy, but I'm helping Joe and others as well. We're all really working together to try to finally, at least,
Yeah.
if we went from three districts that are Republican to, that's Darren LaHood, Mary Miller, and Mike Boss. If we
Mhm.
added even just three more, that would be 6 out of 17. We'd
Right.
still be well below where we should be. And gerrymandering is part of it. But in any event, all we need to do is really work a little bit harder than we've past. And
Yeah.
with all the events that are happening now, it really shouldn't be a problem. I should win easily, and so should Joe, and maybe one or two others. So that's what we're doing.
Are there a lot of grassroots organizations in that district that you've been meeting with, and do they understand the not just opportunity, but the responsibility to the rest of the country that they have to help flip that seat? Like,
Yeah,
are they
so
really
that's really interesting that there didn't used to be, and I
right?
think the grassroots has really emerged and grown
Mhm.
because we've had a pretty big failure of the statewide GOP organizations. And when I say statewide, it's really north of I-80, south of I-80. If you look at a map of Illinois, it's all red, the whole state, except for this little
Right.
blue area in Chicago and the suburbs.
Mhm.
But that's been going on now for decades, even generations. And
Right.
so what you've had is an atrophy of the Republican Party, which is controlled by that little blue area. So
Mhm.
you've got these Democrats in this blue area, some of them, excuse me, Republicans in this blue area of Chicago. Some of them aren't what you'd really call a traditional Republican.
Right.
Many of them are left leaning or more in the center and so forth. And because of all that, it's made a nice situation for the Democrats where they have a really strong hold on this area. And because of that, it's frustrated so many conservatives. Let's not even call them Republicans.
Right.
And they form their own groups, these grassroots groups. And frankly, in my district, I think I have more of that than almost anywhere. We've got several really large ones. One of my dear friends uh, groups has 900 members out in
Mm.
Kane County. We've got them in McHenry County and Lake County and Cook County. And frankly, me being who I am, because I'm a guy from Texas, I'm a true conservative on
Yeah.
really almost every issue, which isn't great. The Democrats don't like that about me, and they're attacking me this week. 2 articles in the Sun Times against me. I mean, I scare them. I'm a threat, but I'm also a threat, frankly, to some of these. I guess you call them Republicans, or I don't use the word rhino, but there's
Right.
some conservatives that I'm way too, or not conservatives, some Republicans in Illinois,
Yeah.
of which I scare because I'm a true conservative. Some Republicans, for example, and it's fine, it's a free country, but some of them are pro-abortion and anti-Trump and anti-gun and this and that. And they might as well be a Democrat. So
Exactly.
they really are scared of me. So they want me to lose, and they work against me quite actively. But I'm a mature guy. I don't care, and that sort of thing is really just fuel for me. But
Hmm.
anyway, the grassroots is really trying to turn that around. And so I'm working a lot with grassroots, but I'm also working with the traditional GOP orgs and the party, and I
Yeah.
support them. And hopefully, I'm actually acting to try to get us together as best as we can,
Yeah.
because nobody agrees on 100% of anything. If you get 70,
Right.
80% agreement, that's enough that we should work together, because we know that the evil that we're fighting against is so very evil and so against everything that we believe. Like 90% of what we believe, they're against. So we've got to come together and work together to
Yeah.
defeat that evil side of things. And I
Right.
think we're having success, at least in my own district, I do.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is that, voting to me is strategic. It's not a purity 100% or 0. It's a
Yeah,
if I can get 70% out of a guy, it's better than, well, 0 or 10%. When I say 10%, I don't even know if I agree with 10% of what they're saying on the left, but 70% out of a guy is a lot better. And because we have that because of the way the system works today with the speakership, and the speakership, I think, is way too powerful in
yeah,
Congress, but that's the way it is right now. I know people who are trying to get in to try to get up there to try to return the power back to the people, but
yes.
we've got to flip the seat. We've got to make sure that the Republicans hold the House, and if we have that opportunity to flip the seat with a guy we agree with 70% of the time, fine. It's
Right. I'm okay with it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll vote for a guy that disagrees with me on several issues, because what's the alternative? The
Right.
alternative is just terrible.
And
And
and you talk about some of
yeah,
the anti-Trump sentiment out there, and I run into this as well, where there's some people that just can't get over, because he does have a powerful personality, and I don't agree with everything he says, but what lasts longer? What impacts my wallet more? What impacts my child's future more?
right.
His policies or his personality?
Right. We call it TDS, Trump
Oh, yeah.
derangement syndrome.
Mhm.
It's a real thing.
Mhm.
I look, I'll be honest, I have 4 kids and a wife, but anyway, 3 of my boys are quite conservative like me, and my
Mhm.
wife as well. But I have a daughter that I sent her to, I paid for 4 years for her to go to college at a little liberal arts school in Ohio called Denison, if you know of it.
Mm.
And it's quite leftist. She was a lacrosse player, and so she got a little bit of a scholarship and an opportunity to play lacrosse there. So she went to that school, and she's now 23 or 24, and she came out as one of those, as a
Yeah.
TDS leftist.
Mm.
And so I love her, and it's actually quite nice that I can love somebody like that, and vice
Yeah.
versa. But so I have a better understanding that there's so much divisiveness, that
Mhm.
these people with TDS that can't stand Trump, a lot of us on the right or conservatives, we just don't even get it, and we just yell at and they don't get us, and we yell at each
Yeah.
other. But there is a way to communicate and try to work with those people. But at the end of the day, it is sort of a trigger mechanism in the brain,
Mhm.
where some people are just so put up by that strong personality and by what they're being fed over and over and over in the leftist
Right.
media. They're watching MSNBC and
Yep.
CNN and so forth, and they They're just angry and they're emotionally upset about it. So they're more concerned that Donald Trump said something about women's body parts that was
Right.
offensive to them than whether their child knows if they're a boy or girl, or whether they can walk outside and not get killed. I mean,
Right.
it is insane, and it's hard to get people over that, but it's just something we have to recognize and work around. And what I do see some Republicans here do is they play into it and says, "Oh, well, I hate Trump," or "I am
Right.
against." They go with some of these triggering things, and I got to tell you, it's all emotion. It's all the media. It's all the media and the powers that be to try to split people into tribes, because you
Yes.
can sell more advertising, or you can get more votes by tribalizing people, and then you get your team to give you money to win an election, or to vote for you, or to buy your advertising, or watch your television station. And all of that is just bad for America.
Hmm.
And I have a 50,000 foot view of that. I think that is a little bit more rational than most people, because most people get all triggered by it, and they just go into their side or the other side, and they just fight each other. And
Hmm.
like I said, with having a daughter like that, it's been very helpful.
Yeah, to see that and to understand that, but also I think you have a tremendous opportunity to, over time, with love, talk to her and plant seeds, because I have a what I call the Save America training camp, and one of the issues I try to address is exactly that.
Yeah,
The most powerful form of marketing is referral word of mouth marketing, and it's personal
right,
conversations. The most expensive and the least effective are these 30-second commercials.
right,
So everybody focuses on, I got to do fundraising. So, but we have that opportunity to have those conversations, because
right,
I highly doubt Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens is going to show up on her radar and
right.
convince her to open her eyes. It's going to
I've
be
tried.
it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be a loving father having some conversations.
Right. Yeah, it's very helpful to be connected to somebody who thinks very differently from you on any
Hmm.
issue, but
Right.
talking about this issue,
Yeah.
they to just to know, look, I'm not crazy. So me and my daughter, in fact, we once did a not a podcast, we did an audio
Mm.
podcast, and I had over like 20,000 followers on this social media platform called Clubhouse. And
Mm.
I was only popular because me and my daughter every once in a while would get on there, and people love hearing the discussion, the
Yeah.
back and forth, because to hear two people who love each other talk about it in a loving way. But
Right.
we talk about guns or abortion, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and my daughter would say, the very leftist bullet points, and I suppose I would say the what would be considered right wing
Right.
bullet points. But then we talk about it, and we reason with each other about it, and
Wow.
we could sometimes make progress. But she's still going to vote for Kamala now,
Or
But
whoever the candidate
so
may
I
end up
haven't.
being.
The saying, when people are young, if they're not a Democrat,
Right.
they don't have a heart. But by the time they grow up a little bit, if they're not a Republican, they don't have a brain. That's a
Right.
traditional
Hmm.
pathway that a lot of people start off a little bit more liberal, and they become more conservative over time. So I still have hope for her.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm looking at your website, and
Yeah.
I was moved by this, and I'm intrigued by this. I want to go through these if you have time, but you have
Sure.
a on your website, riceforcongress.com,
Yes. Thank
on
you.
the priorities tab. You list several priorities here, and your first one says, if you don't mind, I want to go through these and hear your thoughts on these. But
Sure.
restore and strengthen the middle class. In your first sentence, grabbed me because it says harmful government policies and out of control spending.
Out of control.
Why in the world are they not anybody talking about spending? It's all about taxes and how do we raise taxes, get more out, get more funding. They're never
We
talking about the actual problem, which is
right.
spending.
Right. We do talk about it. We just don't use the proper language. We talk about inflation.
Mm.
We know the repercussions of this drunken, out of control spending is bloated government. Government is
Mhm.
way too big. Departments that we don't need, people that we don't need, money going all over the world to countries that don't need it, and for services that maybe made sense 50 years ago during World War II, but don't anymore. But
Mhm.
nothing ever goes the other direction. Once government gets a hold of something, it does nothing but grows,
Yep.
and now we're really paying for it. I guess we could afford it before, or somehow it didn't affect all of us, but now it's really affecting us.
Mhm.
Just go to the grocery store and you're paying 50% more. Gas station, you're paying double. That's bloated government spending with our policies in the Middle East, or the policies with Russia, policies with just printing money for COVID, and or just printing money anyway. Because if you're a congressman and they're the ones who come up with the bills for appropriations for spending money, or you're in the White House, it's very popular to just pay for things, give people free stuff, or
Right.
to make life easy and to say yes. And they're not disciplined because they don't have to, because they have a printing press.
Yes.
Imagine if you had a printing press in your family, you'd buy all kinds of things that you didn't need or that you couldn't afford because you had this magical printing press.
Mhm.
And that is really at the root cause of a lot of our problems. And it's maybe not make me so popular to talk about it, but I think, because I'm not saying, hey, I'm going to give you this and I'm going to give you that and things are going to be free. But we know the costs. Now the media and of course the politicians don't want you to know that, right? They
Right.
want you to just think they're great because they're giving you things that they think that you need. And by the way, the reason they can do that is because they are arrogant. They think that they're a lot better educated than we are,
Mhm.
and they think that they know best. A lot of people can't understand how these politicians get into office. Well, let's face it, most of them are liars anyway. Most of them are narcissists. A lot of them go in poor and come out super wealthy. So there's a whole greed, dishonesty factor. And I'm not one of those. I've never run for anything. I'm a regular guy. And of course, that's what I think we need. But I'm trying to help you understand the psychology is they really think that we're the great unwashed. That's what they call us
Right.
sometimes,
Right. The
and
unwashed
that we
masses.
will just do what they say, and they know a lot better than us. It's kind of
Mhm.
like a parent-child relationship. So they, in their minds,
Mm.
justify it. This is the psychology that they
Yeah.
know way better than we do what's best, and we just, they're willing to do things sometimes which are really dishonest or really not helpful because it's in their interest, not ours, and that's why I have the no more career politicians thing. I think we've got to change that. I mean, I can beat this one guy and get in there and make some little changes, but we've got to change the whole way of thinking. So we need term limits, for example, desperately. And these narcissists aren't going to ever vote for it. I know that. And I know people talk about it all the time. But
Mhm.
since they're so greedy, they're not going to vote themselves out of office. So what you have
Yeah.
to do is probably grandfather those losers in, the guys that are driving us into the ditch, but make for the future. We'll have term limits. I don't know
Yeah.
what that looks like. Maybe 3 terms for Congress, maybe 1 or 2 for
Yeah.
Senate, but that would, and then campaign finance reform, excuse me. See, they made a mistake. They let me behind the curtain. I see how corrupt these people are. I'm in there with both Democrats and Republicans, and it is not about us. It's about them, and
Mhm.
it's disgusting. And someone like me has to get in there and shine light on it. Even now in my campaign,
Yeah.
like we're doing right now, have frank discussions about how we've set up a policy where these guys are destroying our country, but helping themselves and enriching themselves at the same time. My opponent has $17 million. I
Mm.
mean, it's absurd. We should just call lobby fees, call them bribes, because that's what
Right.
they are. We need to
Yep.
stop that. So much of what we've done is we've let it happen as voters because we voted these guys in, sometimes not the best people, and they have slowly, the slow boiling frog method,
Yeah.
they've made it to where they can't lose and it's all at our expense.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I'm all about. And I'm hoping to make big changes by talking to people like you and getting that
Mhm.
out there. And people should be outraged. And there are things that we can do to change it.
Yeah. No, if you don't mind, just a challenge a little bit. I'm not really against term limits. I love the idea of it, but the Constitution was written to tell the government what it can and cannot do, and to
Yeah.
suggest there should be an amendment to the Constitution to restrict the people because if I want to elect somebody, I want to elect somebody.
Right.
Here's my
Hear you.
concern with term limits, and I got this idea from a friend who was a state rep in Florida. I lived there for 22 years, did a lot of my political
Right.
activism, if you will, down there. And he was saying the issue is for him as a new guy, grassroots guy, he gets elected, and he's my pet project is this. And when he gets to Tallahassee, and he says, because they have term limits there, he's like, I am only here for a certain number of terms, so I need to get to work. And so I'm going to hire people who have in my staff, in my office, I'm going to hire people who have been here all their life, who know how to get things done,
Right.
and he said, and he's a lawyer. And he said, I wrote this one bill and we have to go to this, whatever committee it was first. And the committee staff, when he gave it to them, they said, "Oh, you won't be able to do this. You won't be able to do that." They start marketing before they even presented it to any other representative. And he's
Right.
like, "No, no, no. I'm sorry. Just to clarify, I said this is my bill. I am an attorney, number one, but this is my bill. Well, you're not going to be able to, So they were like, so the issue is this nameless, faceless, unelected bureaucrats behind the scenes that are controlling everything. And the revolving door is this face, this facade who just comes and goes. And these lobbyists will walk in and say, "Oh, Judy, oh, you're working for so and so this year. Weren't you working with like,
Right.
can you get
Right.
me into it?" So then all these people who are not elected, now multiply that times the world's largest organization, which is the federal government. And I'm very concerned about that nameless, faceless machine.
Too. No, I am too.
So, so
We are
technically,
talking about the swamp. I just call that the swamp.
yeah, exactly. So technically,
Yeah.
we the people have the power to term limit anybody at any time, but we're not, and so it is on ourselves. Any thoughts on that with the
Yeah.
idea of
Well,
term
first
limits?
of all, like just anecdotally, my own race. Okay.
Hmm.
My opponent has been there 3 terms, or this is his 4th term, and so he's completing his 4th term, and he's terrible. I mean, he's a leftist, and he wants open borders and all defund the police. He's like a wackadoodle, right?
Hmm.
So I want to get rid of him, but he has $17 million, which, by the way, he's like second in all of Congress, and he has 3 times more money than anybody in Illinois. Then that's all from donations from PACs. And where's
Right,
the dark money in the PACs? Where's that? Maybe it's
right,
China. He's
yeah,
involved with China a little bit. So who knows? It's certainly large corporations and people who, by definition, do not share our interests. They're self-interested. They're interested in
completely,
maybe destroying America, but like take a corporation like a pharma, they're interested in selling vaccines or whatever. And so
right,
they give these guys hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. But the point is, I have some money myself, so I've invested in my own campaign, and I get some donations, but I have hundreds of thousands of dollars to his 17 million. How
right.
can you possibly beat somebody if you have no money compared to what they have? And that's a
With a
shame.
with a
That
grassroots organization. That's
not
that's
no, they don't have that kind of money. Seven.
no,
Where am
no,
I going
not
to
with the
get?
money, but the boots on the ground.
Well, that's what I'm doing. That's how I'm going to
Yeah,
win.
yeah,
But just look, as a 50,000 foot view
yeah,
across the United States. If all people that want to make change have to fight against an opponent who has 10x more money than they do,
hmm,
it makes it really, really difficult to win, even with wonderful people on the ground and boots on the ground and all of
yeah,
that. They can do all kinds of things. And they do. If you just look at the statistics of how often incumbents win,
yes.
I think it's in the 90
90,
percent
yeah,
range or more.
I always say, Congress has a 14% approval rating,
Right.
but 95% of them get reelected.
Right. But we do have a fix for that too. I mentioned that as well. Not
Yeah.
just term limits, campaign finance reform.
Hmm.
Because having a system where you reward people for doing you favors,
Right.
and then they're in a position to do favors, and people that are trying to get into office aren't, because a guy like me, I'm not a politician. I don't have that kind of power.
Hmm.
So they're able to get really as much money as they want, actually as much money as they need to
Right.
make sure to ensure that they win, which they're not stupid. They kind of are stupid. They're corrupt, a lot of them, but they're not stupid. They know about self-preservation. So that whole
Yeah.
system really needs to be changed. And once again, we could change that with campaign finance reform, but once again, the incumbents are never going to do it. They talk about it every
Right.
election cycle, and they never do it. That's going back since I was a child. They've been talking about that. So you grandfather those corrupt guys in and let
Mhm.
them, stay with the system. But who would vote against that? Who would say that that system is helpful or equitable are a good thing for America. Clearly, it's not. So both things, term limits and campaign finance reform. And I think what you see is people who are there to serve the people. You
Yeah.
see people electing to go into office and to serve the people that are sacrificing, not doing it for their own egos or their own bank account,
Right.
their own wallet. And it has gotten so bad. And so more than anything, of course, my issues are I want to fix the border, and I'm for freedom and pursuit of happiness. I mean, everything. Probably you and I are probably in radical agreement on all the
Hmm.
policies. But one thing that I actually talk a lot about because I see it, and don't forget, I live here in Chicago where it's so prevalent, is there is so much widespread corruption. And sometimes people go to jail, and we need to send a lot more of them to jail. But the corruption is just pervasive, and it's in
Yeah.
our face.
Right.
Pelosi is worth how much money? She's the
Right.
best stock picker in the world.
Right.
I mean, some of these things are so ridiculous, and the fact that we've let this get to this point is shame on us all for
Hmm.
allowing it to happen. But let's get in there and let's do something about it. And that's a
Yeah.
big part of what I'm all about, because I know that would be helpful for the rest of our lives and our children and our grandchildren,
Yeah.
and they deserve it.
You see, have you seen the HBO documentary? I think it was 4 years ago. It's called The Swamp. They
Yeah.
followed Matt Gaetz and Thomas
Yep.
Massey and some others. I
Love Thomas Massey. His wife just died.
Yes.
But yeah, I know all about that. And I want to give you another little thing. I don't mind
Hmm.
saying it publicly. I have an uncle, my mother's brother, an uncle of mine, who's been a lobbyist on the Hill for probably 40 years, something like that. And he's got some of the larger military customers and whatnot.
Right.
And I've had the fortune to, we actually don't get along very well, but you imagine that. But anyway,
Right.
but I've been up there and I've been sort of behind the scenes. I've been to the Republican Club and I see what goes on. It's just like, if you want to know how politics work, watch what's it called, Distinguished Gentlemen. Do you remember that
Mm-mm.
with Eddie Murphy? It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
movie. It's sort of old, but it's about the widespread corruption and how the lobbyists and the swamp are really controlling things, and how
Yeah.
politicians themselves are all about raising money and getting elected and could care
Mm.
less about
Mhm.
us and policy.
Right.
That's all it's about. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. And I don't, people maybe sort of in the back of their mind, they know it, but they think maybe we're powerless to do anything about it,
Mhm.
and they just give up or they bury their heads in the sand and they hope things will change. Well, I'm here to do something about it, and I've had it. I'm mad as hell, and I say enough is enough, and I'm telling the truth, and I get attacked a lot for it. And that means I'm circling over the target. I'm in
Yes.
the right
Yeah.
spot, and I'm happy to do that. And I
Yeah,
think all of us should do that.
if you're not catching flack, you're not over the target. But when they
Right.
dangle that forbidden fruit, when they dangle that, let's say you win, you go to DC, and
I
what
know
the
what you're going to
swamp
say.
really
Yep.
yeah, what
Yep.
the swamp really does is they say, "Man, that was a hard-fought campaign. Good
Right.
for you. You did the
Congratulations.
but we're gonna make it easier this next time."
Right. That's
They
right. I
plan
could
these different
give.
fundraisers for you,
Right.
and I the way they described it, in the movie or in the documentary
Yeah.
is these committee assignments. They're not
Yeah.
based on merit. They're not based on your area of focus and your talent.
Of
It's
course not.
for
Of
those
course.
things. It's based on how much money you can raise.
Of
And they've got
course.
A,
Of
B,
course.
and C level oversight committee and
Yeah.
whatever, but dog catcher committees down at the bottom. But
Yeah.
if you want to be on a committee, you have to raise a certain amount of money. And how
That's
do you raise the
exactly right.
money? It's not $5 and $10 from your neighbors in your
That's
district. It's these guys over here.
that's
How do you withstand that?
so I've told you, look, I'm leading in the polls right now. The last
Mhm.
poll was I'm up by 4, but I think it's because things have gotten so bad that a
Right.
guy like me who tells the truth there's enough people that they know we need that. But the people who are the establishment that are in there already, they do not like me. And that they're scared of me.
Mhm.
And I'll give you my background. For example, both my mother just passed away.
Mm.
God bless her soul. But anyway, my father's passed away. I've been around a lot. I'm 61 years old. I turned 61 yesterday. It was my birthday.
Oh, happy
But
birthday.
anyway, I'm old enough and I'm successful enough in life. I've made a lot of money over many years, enough that I'm very comfortable, more than comfortable, I would say. And I think a lot of people, perhaps that are maybe younger, or maybe they certainly ambitious and need money, and that's a big part of what drives them, or they need an ego. I'm just too old to care. Or frankly, there's even a whole deviant sexual thing that's part of this whole craziness. Where, and
Mhm.
I'm married for 40 years almost. I don't have any of that. And plus I'm too old to worry about it. Money is just not something that drives me at all. If anybody knows me, they know that. And and then the business about ego is, I've run large companies. I own actually a pretty large company with hundreds of people, and I have an organization I started with the 1,200 people. I don't need my name on anything. In fact, we go back to religion. The biggest good deed, we call it a mitzvah. The biggest mitzvah you can do when you're giving to charity or being charitable is to do it anonymously. And I truly believe that. But I think you're really onto something, that a lot of good people, seemingly
Mhm.
good people, and they even mean well in their hearts, when they once they get involved in this corrupt cesspool that
Yeah.
exists in Washington and in Springfield and a lot of just in government in general,
Mhm.
that the evil powers, foreign powers, and corporations and large entities that want to buy and control these people, they tempt them with money or with sex or with ego types of things, putting them
Right.
on boards or helping their family, and even just purely illegal stuff. They just bribe them and give them money, or give their they find ways to do it. Not well. I'm not about any of that, and
Yeah.
that's actually what's driving me into this. Is that we got to end that. We've
Right.
got to end that. So that doesn't make me popular with them, but I think it's making me popular with the people, and I think I'm going to win because of it.
That's great. And the issue, I mean, check all those boxes that you talked about of your personal characteristics, but the one that is where they tempt you is that was a hard fought campaign. That was, we're going to make your reelection easy. So it's not that you're going to personally benefit financially, your family and the boards and
Yeah.
whatever, but it's just, they're going to get
Yeah,
a
but
bunch
why
of,
would I
they're going to get
care
the
about that?
right.
For me, I don't. I want term limits. I don't want to
I
live
know.
there.
Yeah.
In fact,
Well,
I've already told people I'm not going to
yeah.
buy a place or even rent a place. I'm going to stay in my office. Some
Yeah.
people do that. It sounds crazy,
Hmm.
but like I think that place is just a cesspool, like I said,
Hmm.
and we need to change it. And you need to just get people in there to make change. And I won't be popular
Right.
amongst the swamp. They will
Yeah.
hate me. They'll fear me. They already do. I get threats and all kinds of things. Just yesterday, a mayor threatened me. A mayor in my anyway. Actually, I don't want to disclose that
Yeah.
exact thing, but my point is I don't need friends. I've got a dog. I don't even need
Mhm.
money. I've got plenty of money.
Yeah.
I'm giving it to my kids and so forth, trying to take care of my family. And ego, I don't know if you, I suppose if you don't know me intimately, you wouldn't know, but I just don't have an ego.
Yeah.
And I'm very introspective about life, and I believe in God. I think God's in charge anyway. And like I said before, I think my job is to help make people aware of this, and to do just little things like voting, little
Mhm.
things we can do to help
Right.
change that for the better. If we don't, we're doomed. I mean,
So
things have
just
gotten that bad.
when you get there, however, I always tell people, don't drink the water because you're going to want to stay. but your
Well,
second one,
I
which you
hear
kind of
you.
talked about, is crackdown on government waste and corruption. Now we don't have tons and tons of hours to talk about that because there's a lot
Yeah,
out there.
we could
But
talk about that for hours.
I
Absolutely.
know. But this idea that only, the world's largest organization is the federal government, 2 point
Yeah,
whatever million employees. And that's not even
yeah,
part time. That's not even contractors.
yeah.
This
Our
idea that
founders would be
only,
rolling over in their graves, right?
oh, yeah.
Rolling over in their graves.
This idea that
That the government should be
435
in all of our
representatives
lives.
of, yeah, the idea that 435 representatives of the people and some over quote unquote oversight committee is going to oversight all of that. How in
Right.
the
Right.
world do you, as a freshman congressman, get there and to begin to crack that egg?
One, you know how you make a watch, right? One piece at a time.
Hmm.
That's exactly how you do it. You take,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say right now what my one first issue
Right,
will
right,
be.
right.
There's several things that are like low hanging fruit that we can talk about, that we can guilt these representatives into voting for, like ending the Department of Education. It
Mhm.
serves no purpose. It makes things worse, and it costs hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. There's so many things that we can do that are
Yeah.
easy. I'd like to just try to not aim, not try to hit a home run, but try to hit a bunch of singles. And that's exactly what I'd like to do, is get in there
Yeah.
and do that, as well as, don't forget what I said. I mean what I said. I would like to essentially do a we call like a forensic audit in accounting, but essentially do like a proctology exam on
Right.
some of these bad actors without anesthesia. They're not going to like it.
Oh, yeah.
And when we find problems, expose it, get them to resign, leave, and or put them in prison. We got
Yeah.
some really bad actors running things on the swamp side of things and the elected official side of things. And I want to, and some people are working on that. And I love that, but I want to be part of that. And I know I'm not going to be popular. And I know, frankly, I probably need a bodyguard, but I carry a gun. I'm a concealed carry holder, and I believe in the 2A. But
Yeah.
it's our duty. We have to do something. We can't just sit blindly, or our kids are going to be destroyed, and our grandkids forget about it.
If only we could come up with some sort of document that actually outlines exactly the limitations placed upon government. And if we
Right.
could actually just start there and say, hey, if you're doing things outside of, actually, if we could get them to swear an oath to protect and defend that document, that would be a great
On that
start.
document. Right.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
work on that? I mean,
Yeah, no, that's what we
so
need to do, is just go back to the Constitution and try to right size government, get them
yeah,
out of our way. Even the Democrats know that government is mostly just in our way. Government isn't solving the problem, it is the problem. So, of course, I'm for smaller government, shrinking the size of everything,
yeah.
getting rid of a lot of areas where the government is in our lives where they should not be, and they're making things worse, not better.
Mhm.
But along the way, they're enriching these people. They're enabling these people to stay in office. They're
Yeah.
enriching people by putting money in their pockets. And so we've got to figure a way to, first of all, expose that, shine light on that, and then to turn that around through legislation and through policy and through enforcement, so that we can
Mhm.
get the country back. And that's why I tell people, we've got to take our country back. It's gotten away
Yeah.
from us, and we've got to
We
get it
need
back.
got to fit that thing back inside the Constitution, which leads me to number 3 on your priorities list. And I love this. The last book I wrote, I have a section in there, and I titled it "How to Analyze Proposed Legislation with 10 Questions." And you have what you call a liberty litmus test to legislation and policy. So you want to uncover what's going on in the past, get some oversight on these different things, but going forward, you have a liberty litmus test. You're the only one I've really talked to that, at least a candidate that has something like that. And
Yeah.
I love that idea. Tell me more about that. Where'd that come from?
Well, I'd be interested to read your book and see what the
Yeah.
10 questions are. But
Mhm.
I mean, first of all, going back to the corruption issue relating to legislation and a litmus test, so many of these guys, you could just look at their fec.gov and see where their money comes from and
Mhm.
which lobbyists fund them, and that will show you how they vote. It's dollar for dollar. It's so remarkable how nobody goes against the money that they're receiving in terms of the legislation that they propose and or that they vote for. And so much of it is based on corruption that would be the test. I mean, and I,
Yeah.
I would love to, it's unfortunately it's not illegal, but it's so embarrassing. I think that we could show that, for instance, my opponent is, for example, well, I don't know how much money he gets that's China related, but for example, he gets money from Facebook. Facebook's biggest competitor is, I guess, TikTok, I suppose. And he came up with legislation to get rid of TikTok while
Right.
he's the vice chair or the co-chair, excuse me, for the committee on the CCP. So, and the only thing that they've done is they didn't even ban TikTok. They sort of made a legislation to change ownership of the U.S. piece of TikTok.
Right.
But anyway, is that what our Congress should be doing, worrying about TikTok? CCP is killing children and trying to destroy America, probably
Yeah.
behind so much of the problems that we have because they're actively working against us. And the only thing they've done is, my opponent, who's the head of that committee, is help one of his donors to
Right.
minimize their competition. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much of legislation is influenced, and it's all crafted by lobbyists, as you know. It's not
Yeah.
None of it's crafted by the actual people, and none of it's because their constituents ask them. And I've been on the Hill. Look, I've never been in Congress and so forth. I've never run for anything, but I've been on the Hill a lot. And I've been in Washington way more than I'd like to have been. And I've been in those meetings. I mean, I was in a, my son and I were joking around. You'll love this. Just yesterday, we were talking. It was my birthday, so he took me out to breakfast. And he actually ran for Congress. That's how I learned about this thing. I have a
Mm,
son who is young and really wants to change things, and he's very angry about what's going on. So anyway, we're in Washington for an AIPAC meeting, who, by the way,
mm,
doesn't support me. I'm a Zionist Jew, and they don't support me because I can't vote for them. So they give money to my opponent, who also gets money from CARE, which is basically like Hamas. So,
right.
so it's so ridiculous. And when you're behind the scenes, you see that, you know how ridiculous it is. If you don't say something about it and do something about it, shame on you. It's like witnessing a
Yeah.
crime. You're literally at a crime scene. And if you do nothing, you should be held guilty and accountable
Right.
for doing nothing about it. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what drives me. But anyway, my son, we were in a meeting with a bunch of senators, and they and in a group, and they wanted aid to Israel. That's a whole different subject. But anyway, and so they would have like a 7-year-old girl read a little piece of paper that she wrote that I'm sure her mom or dad told her to write, saying, please vote for giving more money for, for fighter jets. Israel needs more fighter jets, and we
Right.
need, $300 million for that. And will you
Oh
please?
my
I mean,
gosh.
it is a joke. It's like I said, that distinguished gentleman. Our VP is a good show about what
Mhm.
goes on there. It's so corrupt and upside down. Somebody needs to go in there with a camera, or
Yeah.
a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but like a doctor, to do that colonoscopy, give those people a proctology exam, and just
Yeah.
show people what's going on and put an end to it. But I'm not stupid. I've disrupted a lot of things in my life, actually, other industries and businesses, and even in the nonprofit world. I've been very disruptive. When I see evil, I'd like to shine light on it and turn it around. And you have to do it methodically. You have to do it one little step at a time. Nothing happens overnight. But
Right.
I'm hoping to get in there to do that. And I'm doing that by flipping the whole, so we haven't talked about this, but the whole election process is filled with fraud and corruption and
Yeah.
so forth. And I'm trying to navigate that in a way that I can still live with myself, that it's ethical, but at the same time realize that the evil folks that have all this money and don't have our interests, that they're way ahead of us. And that's why I'm leading in the
Mhm.
polls. I'm adopting some of their tactics and working really hard, lots of shoe leather,
Yeah.
not making fancy speeches, doing the work to get it done.
Yeah. See, you mentioned Thomas Massey. He was on Tucker short time ago. I watched
Yeah,
his full interview, and he was talking about APAC, and he was
yeah,
saying,
yeah. He hates APAC.
everybody. He says they hate him, but they say everybody has an
Everybody's got their
APAC guy,
APAC guy. I know.
right? So you probably won't even have one.
What? Oh my God! I just got through yelling at my APAC guy. I told him he's a scumbag, and I'm gonna expose him, and he needs to be fired. And I went over his head and wrote a letter to tell that the APAC. Well, like I said, I have no filter, and I'm
Yeah.
honest, which I think people appreciate, but it does get me in trouble. But let's just say that the person assigned to me from APAC, here I am, a right wing conservative believer in God and so forth. And this guy was a teachers union,
Mm. Oh,
some
so
kind of leader. And
you're a double threat. Department of
and by the
Education and
way, I believe in Israel. I'll be totally honest with you. I
yeah.
support Israel. I am against Iran, and I call Hamas and Hezbollah out. They are terrorists. They need to be destroyed. I don't even think they can be negotiated with. And I believe in Israel. I'm Yisrael Chai. I have family there right now in Gaza. Even I have a first cousin who's in a tunnel in Gaza with the IDF.
Mm.
He's doing work there. But so I believe in Israel 100%. But APAC is a lobby. I mean, the whole structure of the United States government in Washington, the way people get elected, and the way that they craft laws that are supposed to help us is really broken, and it needs to be fixed. And so, hopefully, at least me talking about it and educating people about that, because they probably wouldn't believe it if they just go there and talk to people and really understand what's going on. You just wouldn't believe the level of corruption and how these people are elected, and how it's a vicious cycle, and how people like me find it very difficult people like me, people like us, regular
Yeah.
people,
Right.
we have no say. And they make you think you have say, and they'll take your money and thank you and shake your hand and
Right.
send you a letter. When you go to Washington, you'll get a tour and all that. But, the truth is, they're laughing at us. They think we're nothing, and they're
Yeah.
there for themselves, not for us. And it's got to stop.
It's like wrestling,
Yeah.
the cameras are on, they're on the house floor, and they're like, "Oh, on the other side of the aisle," and then
Yeah.
afterwards, they're in the cafeteria high-fiving.
Yeah, exactly. And they're laughing, they're giggling.
Yeah.
And I've been there. And let me tell you, I hate to say this once again, but I'll be honest. It's not on just the Democrat side. It's on both sides.
Mhm.
It's
Absolutely.
it's 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 endemic in the process, and we've
Yeah.
created this over time. Like I said, a slow boiling frog amount of time, but it's just
Yeah.
gone from so very far what the founders of the
Yeah.
writers of the Constitution had in mind that I think we've got to take it back. And if we do, I just don't know where we're going to be.
It's like these committee hearings you see, and I'm gonna sternly ask you the exact same question all the other guys do, but or all the other guys did, but it's my turn to have a YouTube video, and
Right.
so I
To
need a
get the
fundraising
sound
video
bite.
after this.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But
That's
and then
embarrassing.
afterwards, I'm gonna issue you a strongly worded letter,
Right. Right.
you know?
Right. Nobody ever gets fired ever. That's in those hearings when they always ask that. Well, who did you fire? Nobody.
Right.
These are
Well,
jobs for life,
they
and
resigned on
the
their own.
elected jobs are jobs for life too, because and they die in office, or they were
Right.
wearing diapers in office because they can be there as long as really they want to. I suppose
Yeah.
once they make enough money from all the grift and bribes and whatnot, some of them choose to leave, but very seldomly do they leave by force by somebody like me who can beat them because,
Right.
like, just in my own race, like I said, it's $17 million, which is
Yeah.
17 million strings attached to all of that
Yeah.
money. So a guy like me that can put up a few 100,000, and I can raise maybe a few 100,000, but we're at such a disadvantage. It's just hard to make these guys retire. Look at
Yeah.
Joe Biden. I say,
Goodness.
I said the other day, we have, even today, we have a vegetable running the country. I think
Mhm.
he's able to process things, and it's a shame. I feel for him and his family, but come on, he's not all there. So, but what we've done is we're replacing a vegetable with a plant.
Mm.
Here's somebody who didn't receive one vote for anything and is literally put into this position. I'm talking about Kamala, of course,
Yeah.
by the swamp, by these same very people that were saying are so evil, because that's who they want, because that's who they can control. Donald Trump, I don't think anybody thinks can be controlled.
Right.
Whether you like him or hate him, I don't think anybody thinks he can be controlled by those kinds of folks. Not for money and not for ego, not for anything.
Yeah.
He's kind of like me. I'm in the same situation. I'm an older guy. I tell people all the time, if we could get rid of the vegetable and get rid of the plant, get rid of the
Mhm.
435 reps, get rid of the 100 people. I don't mean kill them. I mean, just, they have to step
Right,
down.
right, right.
And we just went on the street, any street in America, and replaced them randomly with the people in the street. Our country would be wonderful. We really
Yeah.
have people that are against us, and not for us. They're for themselves, for their
Mhm.
their controllers, the people that give them the money. And I'm hoping to be a part of that. That's what I'm trying to do.
We'll end on this one, but I want to talk through this on your Liberty Litmus test. Below that, your priorities, you have peace through strength around the world. Your first sentence grabbed me. It says, our current foreign policies are making the world a more dangerous place for America. I think more and more people are coming to that realization, and it's really uncomfortable. There's some that are still trying to hang on to this idea, but tell me what you mean by that and kind of talk through this a little bit.
Sure. I wonder, Jason, how many people do realize it. I think more people are coming to that realization
Mhm.
because of the results. So we put in, oh, like Obama did the same thing. He ran around the world and apologized for
Right.
what the U.S. had done, and we had a lot of reversals of things. And of course, Biden, after Trump, we had, who was a strong leader and who threatened these world powers with the strength that we have. Our military is second to none, and that worked. And we had no wars, and we weren't involved in any conflicts. And then the first thing that happens when we get a really weak leader like Joe Biden in is this horrible retreat from waving the white flag and leaving Afghanistan in such an embarrassing way. That was the first tell and people knew who he was because he was a known commodity. He's a very weak leader, and he was controlled by a lot of weak people in the State Department, and probably, frankly, Obama. I mean, I always said, who is
Okay.
Joe Biden? Who's really in charge? It's not Joe Biden. But in
Right.
any event, there are people who don't believe in peace by strength, and what you get is what you see. So now you have immediately you have Ukraine, almost being run over by Russia. Putin's not afraid of us, and then you have, of course, what's gone on in Israel on the 7th, where I'm personally involved a little bit. I had a friend who was a hostage and another friend who died in the attack, and anyway, and you have what's going on with China and Taiwan, and who knows what else will go on. How about the people flooding across the border? How many of them are terrorists?
Yeah.
I don't know, but some are. And when you have 10 million, 20 million coming across, even if it's a percent of a percent of a percent, that's a lot more terrorists than perpetrated 9/11 and so forth. So it's very scary what goes on when you have weak leadership, and it's
Yep.
proven throughout history. I was a history major at the University of Texas, that when you show weakness like that, you embolden evil
Hmm.
people in the world to do whatever they want to do, and what they want to do almost always is to destroy us, or it's against
Yeah.
our interests anyway. If not to destroy us directly, it's our proxies and our allies, and to
Hmm.
destroy the idea of freedom and democracy.
Yep.
And it's just terrible. And that is a very scary thing as well. And it just goes hand in hand with weak leadership, also destroying our own country with sort of fecklessness and really upside down policies relating to the economy and relating to the large government control in
Yeah.
every aspect of our lives. And just by replacing that leadership, we can turn that around, I think, really quickly.
Yeah. And I would add with that weak leadership, there's also this. I remember this whole war on terror. They're talking about if we fight them over here, we won't have to fight them over here. And I think that they were so aggressive in so many different areas, they actually it was a recruiting ground. So it actually the problems grew over there. And oh, by the way, we left the back door open. So
Yeah.
now they're actually coming over here now.
I mean, just look what happened. And just to take one little thing in the scheme of the world,
Yeah.
Afghanistan was a relatively minor war going on. And gosh, what did we do? We retreated, showing weakness. We let some of our precious soldiers die, which did not have to happen. And then we left them billions of dollars worth of
Yeah.
military equipment to the terrorists we were supposed to be against. And now some of that equipment is being used against us directly and
Yeah.
indirectly all over the world. And of course, they have the power and the confidence to do it. If you look at how Israel treats terrorists, and Bibi was at Congress just the other day, I think he was Winston Churchill like in terms of what he said, which is there is evil in this world,
Mhm.
and a lot of people now just don't believe that. We're living in this utopia fantasy that the world now is different than it was in the past. There is no Adolf Hitler. There is no Ayatollah Khomeini or Saddam Hussein or whoever. A lot of young people believe that, but there is evil, and we have
Mhm.
to face it and we have to fight it. And if we don't, it's completely to our own detriment. And if we avoid it, eventually you end up with things like holocausts and things like that. And we've had 4 years, unfortunately, of this, and hopefully that's going to end in November. And I'm doing my little bitty part to try to help, to make that end and to bring in peace in the world, but it's peace through strength.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean Ryan with his podcast recently uncovered that we're still paying, I think he said 40 to 80 million dollars a week to the Taliban. But of course, it's just supposed to be used for
Right.
aid. We're still
Well,
paying them.
Well, Jason, Iran is getting billions and billions of dollars, both directly from us, but also, even more importantly, they're getting more money because of our energy policy, which is
Right.
helping them and hurting us. So we're
Yeah.
paying all this money. I'm in the energy business my whole life. So I know something about that, a lot more than these stupid guys making the decisions. They just don't know what
Right.
they're doing. And one of the things they're doing is helping our enemies by pumping up the price of oil, enabling them to then sell a lot more of it because the sanctions never worked. And now they're selling a lot more than ever before at a much, much higher price. And these are people that literally are killing us. Like Iran is sending missiles over to killing our soldiers in the Middle East so far. God forbid they get a nuclear weapon or they
Right.
get ballistic missiles that can go further. We're the big Satan, Israel's the little Satan. And we're funding them through policy and even through really stupid, wrong-headed stuff, thinking we can buy them off with money. And so we've been sending them money. Remember the plane loads of cash. And
Right.
I mean, this stuff is just terrible. And we've got to put new leaders in that they may not be perfect. Donald Trump may not be perfect. And I tell you what, I'm not perfect either. But my good friend died just recently, Kinky Friedman. He was kind of a famous guy, cowboy from Texas. Had a band called Kinky Friedman and the Texas Jew Boys. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No,
He's a prolific author.
that's
Anyway,
awesome.
he had a say. He ran for governor of the state of Texas, and he had a saying. He said with his cigar in his mouth, he said, "I may be no damn good, but I'm a lot better than what you got." I mean,
Mm,
we have just the worst of the worst. And put me in there, put me in, coach,
yeah.
and I can change this at least a little bit, and then I'll get the heck out and turn it over to other people.
Yeah.
And that's what we need is we just need a refresh. We need to hit the alt delete button,
Yeah.
right?
We need a great reset in Congress, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Mark Rice, thank you so much for your time today. I want to continue this conversation as the campaign keeps going.
Appreciate
It's,
that.
you bet, Rice for Congress, riceforcongress.com, Illinois 8th Congressional District. Go there, donate, and help, but become a volunteer. We need a grassroots army. We want to make
Absolutely.
sure that you know that you got placed there by the people, and you've got to stay
I'm
engaged with
doing.
you. So, yeah, that's all.
So
God bless you, Mark.
I got 350 so far, and we're
Mm,
going to get to 500, and the 500 people walking and knocking on doors, that's going to win it for us.
that's awesome. I'd love to come in for a training and all that and talk
Come
to those
on
folks. That'd be great.
tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
This segment brought to you by the Remembrance Project, theremembranceproject.org.